What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. I'm BobbyFi back here with my man Eric Sheets-Haber. Coming off of a decent night for myself. I only played one lineup of each, had some daughter responsibilities, had a great time with her, and was looking pretty good for a little late sweat out there on FanDuel in the big 1500. Didn't quite get there, but really liked the lineup, liked the process. We talked a lot about Embiid yesterday. We talked about other guys being underpriced a little bit. Josh Richardson is a guy I ended up going with at the end. I loved Brandon Ingram. He ended up being much lower owned than I thought he was going to be. Anyway, a lot of good stuff. But we're ready to move on to a really interesting 4-game slate tonight. Sheets, what are you thinking?
I'll tell you, Bobby's a freaking genius. I'm going to tell you why. Because when the news came out on Cat, which I really didn't think was going to happen, right? Now, again, like Bobby had to go out. He had his thing, but he still wanted to put his one good lineup in. And he texted me after the game started that, oh my God, Embiid is 4% owned in the big one on FanDuel. And my half sarcastic response was going to be, well, of course, is because Dang is probably 96% owned. And literally the other 4% ownership had to go to somewhere. I'm very curious, how many, I guess the answer is 4%. Like how many people had it in them to do what you did and to pay all the way up for Embiid when all that value on Dieng just kind of just came down. And that's the way you have to be different, especially when you're playing against all those freaking sharks in there. You know what I mean? And you were dead on it right all during the show. And you were like, Embiid's my best play. And you even said stuff you never say before. Like, I never lock people in. I never think of locking someone in, especially whatever. And you went on a 15-minute rant about freaking narratives. The conclusion being that you really, really loved Embiid. And you know what? You were playing one lineup on a $1,500 ticket, and you backed it up with a uber contrarian play. And, whether it worked or not, it was a really, really good – I mean, it's just what you have to do to make money, especially if you're going to play in that type of happened to have worked out really well. I mean, Embiid smashed, and Jay Rich was just an awesome 5% play, and he 7x'd, and Ingram
was unowned too. Hardly owned.
Ingram was 0% owned, and he had he actually could have run better. I mean, he could have had even more than he had.
Yeah, he had like 55 but he had it like he had it in 3 quarters basically.
He was insane, and Bobby was. I want to say he was close to winning, but he was a couple of decisions away from really being in the ballgame. He ended up cashing and cashing by a really, really safe margin, and it was a really. I thought I was pretty impressed because I was sweating it.
Yeah, no, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I actually liked the lineup. I felt really good about the process, and I really felt good talking through. It was one of those slates where I just felt like I had a lot of conviction. And when you only play one lineup, sometimes that makes it a little bit easier to be that way. But I really felt like we're back on track and ready to just crush through this weekend. Lots of interesting football coming up Saturday, Sunday, and then starting out for this nice little 4-gamer tonight. So, what are your sort of overall outlook on this initial slate? I mean, it's kind of it's a slate where I could see making an argument sort of for every game.
Yeah, I thought so too. But it's funny. I never really come out this way, but the two best, I guess it could come out this way. The two best basketball games for me might end up being where I have the least exposure. And it's going to be really, I mean, you think about it. I mean, you have LeBron, AD, Giannis, Harden, Westbrook, Kawhi, and Paul George in those games, and yet I don't know how many of them I'm going to have. So let's see how it plays out, I guess. So the first game, Utah against Atlanta. I was telling Bobby before, I went through my own approach to the slate last night and just trying to get a sense for who I thought was going to be high projected. And I'm really not an expert. I don't know how to make projections. I was kind of using my gut and seeing where these prices are or whatever it is. And it's kind of interesting to see that it doesn't come out exactly the way I thought it was going to. So let me just go through it. The Utah side of this game, you got a lot of guys who are projecting pretty well. You got Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Ingles. They're all projecting pretty well. And then the next guy on the list is O'Neal. So my one comment about this is, so Mike Conley has been ruled out for a decent amount of time, actually. I just want to throw this out there. I guess it's something we have to look at. It wasn't too long ago that Mike Conley was ruled out and Emmanuel Mudiay was 70% owned. Again, people thought he was going to start, so it might have been a little different. But I'm going to just keep an eye on it. You know what I mean? I might, again, on a 4-game slate, I might go back to something like that because, again, it is a fast-paced matchup, so anything's possible, especially with the way Atlanta guards, which is 0. But those are the main guys on Utah. Again, the Moody is just kind of like just a really wild idea. But I will tell you that all 4 of those Utah guys that I mentioned really project very, very well. So when you're thinking about what these other games are coming up, it's kind of interesting. The Atlanta side, it's not a big surprise that Trae Young is projecting really well. I didn't think he would. See, at 9,800, again, me not being a projections maker, I would just look at 9,800. I'm like, wow, 9,800 for Trae Young, and he's playing Utah and all this stuff. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how well he's going to project, but they love him, man. I mean, he's getting very, very good projections. And I will say a couple of things. Number one, we've talked about him the last several podcasts, whatever, that people have been trying to figure out a way to play against him by blitzing him on the pick and roll, has made his life very difficult. The other thing I will say is that in his last game, which people are going to look at and projection systems are going to take into account, okay, he got about a good 20% of his fantasy points in about 9 minutes of garbage run in the fourth quarter, which we talked about the other day. So I'm not going to say that's
just to add on to that. I don't want to cut you off, but I wanted to throw one thing out just to add to my fury the other day about him getting those minutes. Of course, now he's questionable with a calf contusion. Now he's going to.
I didn't even see that. Oh my God!
If you're gonna play a guy the most minutes of the season in a 35-point deficit on the road on the 4 out of 6 and you're going to play him 41, the most minutes he's played, there is something just drastically wrong with that type of thinking, in my opinion. And I'm not saying these players should be load managed, but why are you going to play him this ceiling of minutes in the game that they have no chance in? Like, what are you trying to prove? So it's a really weird situation with him. And to be honest, I don't hope that he's hurt, but I hope at some point he does have to take a couple weeks off or something, because they should not be treating him this way. He's a little fragile guy, and he's not going to be able to play 82 games like this.
Yeah. So to finish off, none of the other Hawks guys look pretty good to me. Look very good to me, if you want to know the truth. Mm-hmm. So my initial approach would be unfortunately to take these Utah guys, either a few of them and pair them with Trae Young and hope I'm wrong, or just play 1 or 2 of these Utah guys just because they just project so well against this type of Atlanta zero defense that either one of them can get there on their own. I mean, you can make a case that Gobert has literally no one that can guard him on Atlanta. He can get whatever he wants, and Mitchell has no one to guard him. He can get whatever he wants. So I think this game can be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I just want to point out the Hawks have given up 130 or more in 5 out of the last 10. Twice over 140.
Once to the Knicks.
Once to the Knicks in an absolute massacre blowout. So, I know it's a road game, and I'm not going to predict a blowout here because I actually think Utah has got some issues, but I do think that there's a definite chance of it. It's got to be something that at least weighs in our mind, which sort of opens up the Mudiay plays like you were talking about a little bit. It's not even necessarily the way it's the way games blow out and stuff. You know what I mean? If Mudiay can get some run and he's playing well with the second unit, they'll let him stay out there. And I don't mind that play. Trying to prioritize this game is a little bit difficult for me because I like some of the other spots later in the slate, but I really, what I've been saying about New Orleans, Minnesota, is I think really applies more to Atlanta than any of them now. It's just we've just got to try to attack against them as much as possible. This is not a defense. I don't understand what we are going to call them, but they're not playing defense. And especially, and I'm just going to double check Atlanta's rotations tonight or my projected rotations. Yeah, we've got Bembry, who may or may not be back in the mix. That could change things a little bit. I know it's not going to change drastically, but him getting minutes makes them a better defensive team than if you have Cam Reddish on the court for a bunch of minutes. Also makes everybody else in Atlanta even less interesting. If I'm going to prioritize it right now, if I'm playing a lot of lineups, I'll have exposure to everybody in the Jazz starting lineup, and I basically want at least 10% of any Jazz who's going to get any significant minutes, including Mudiay, whose minutes may not be significant. But I would side with one play in this game that no one's going to play, but is because he's just always that cheap guy and never gets there. But if you want a matchup where he can get there, it's Royce O'Neal at 4.1. there's an interesting value play with 30-plus minutes. And the weirdest part, I say he never gets there. He's put up 24 or more in 3 out of his last 5. He put up 24 and 28 in his last 2. This is a ceiling type of matchup. We don't have like insane value on this slate. So if nothing opens up, I don't mind playing Royce O'Neal. I would prefer to do it with a Mitchell or a Gobert or both, and then run it back with Trae Young in Atlanta or something. If I'm going to play, I like the stackability of a guy like O'Neal because he's low demand. He doesn't take up the usage from the other guys. He can get you there with steals, blocks, some boards, and a few layups here and there, a couple putbacks. The next thing you know, he's got 25 fantasy points, and you've got him as a nice part of the stack going with, hopefully a 50-point Mitchell and a 50-point Gobert. And then you run it back with hopefully a 60-point, or plus Trae Young. I think it's a really logical way to play on this slate. There's a lot of games to like, but I certainly don't mind that as being one of the preferred options. Other than Trae Young, it's really hard at these prices to have a ton of interest in Utah. I just am going to say that if Jabari Parker's 5.5 and going to be playing minutes, I'm just always going to keep playing him. Like, we're tournament players. We know guys have, 60-plus point ceilings. In general, if you want to beat Utah, you beat them from the outside. So Trae Young and Jabari might make even a little bit more sense here. And then the one other guy who really stands out, like if there's, depending on Bembry status, is just the possible minutes for me with Reddish. I don't think I'm going to go there, but it's just something I wanted to mention. And then the big man game, the projection, in my opinion, might be a little bit off. I think you might see a few more minutes for Len and Damian Jones, but I just don't think I'm going to have enough interest to go there on this slate. So it's pretty much the obvious, the suspects, Trae Young. I don't mind Huerter. I think he's going to play more minutes. We've seen him in a while. And I am on the Huerter is a really good basketball player fan club. I don't think he's had a full chance to show it yet. He's been healthy. But I certainly think that I'm going to have probably at least one Jazz in most of my lineups, and probably a majority. And I definitely think this game is at first glance one of the better games to potentially stack.
Yeah, you addressed my question about Len. I was going to ask you about him. And the Royce O'Neal thing, is this right? I mean, 'cause I'm trying to put these two things together. I could pull a popcorn machine, but I'm just not going to right now. Apparently, on December 17th, they said he was going to come off the bench, and yet he played 35 minutes. Did that actually happen? Or
I didn't know that he played off the bench in that game. If he did, I didn't see that. Conley
no,
did play.
I'm just saying he may not have, but it said leading into the game that he was going to come off the bench.
Yeah, I believe Conley did play that game, right? He started that game.
Okay.
Yeah, he did. That's what happened. So Conley being out, I mean, first of all, he usually starts anyway, but now I think with Conley out, they're definitely going to keep starting him. And by the way, Utah's struggling, so they need to play sort of with a sense of urgency. So you might get a few extra minutes, even like in a 15-point game in the fourth quarter from guys like Gobert and guys like Mitchell. It's not like they're struggling massively, but this is a team that people thought would be competing for the West, and they certainly haven't looked like that yet. So I see them as trying to, maybe really just put the hammer down anytime they get a chance to. So you might get a few extra minutes from those guys in that kind of situation in a 10 to 20-point game, which is
these are kind of early, but one ownership projection run that I'm looking at actually has Donovan Mitchell as one of the top 5 at like 30%, and then Trae Young about 25%. I guess that makes sense on a short slate. But I'd love to find a way to fade Trae Young actually. But I
would have loved to find a way to fade him, but I don't trust this. I can't figure out how to trust these guys. Like, if you're going to play him 40 minutes and they're going to try and they're going to score 109 points against Utah.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, we have to consider. I mean, I don't want to spend an hour and a half on it, but we have to consider the possibility that he doesn't play.
Yeah, I mean, we'll find that out later today. If that doesn't happen, it really creates a mess.
It's a huge mess.
Everybody who's starting is going to be a phenomenal value. Jabari Parker would become a phenomenal value. That's all we can do is just wait and see on that situation. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter. I answered some late breaking questions the last few days. Yeah. Just as long as you don't DM me, because I get tons of DMs. I get tons of texts from friends about what to do every day. It's much easier if I can just answer one general question on Twitter or something like that.
Yeah. Or if we did something live where people can
we will be. This is our New Year plan, buddy. You're giving it away.
All right. Next game, Lakers Milwaukee. They should have this on Christmas, man. This is an awesome thing, man. Both of these games, Lakers Milwaukee and Houston Clippers. Yeah. I mean, these are 4 of the 5, or maybe 4 of the 4 best basketball teams. I don't know. It depends on who you ask. But this is going to be a great game, and I don't know how much I'm going to have of it. So on the Lakers side, the usual question between AD and LeBron. I'm presuming AD is playing. If he doesn't play this game, he should go shoot himself, honestly. But I think they're both going to play, and I have LeBron as the better play by a little bit. I don't have anybody else in the Lakers being good value. I would ask you if this is nationally televised so we could talk about Rajon Rondo. And I really don't have anybody else on the Lakers side to play. That's the thing. And on the Milwaukee side, I mean, Giannis with a real minute ceiling. Yeah, good play. He's a good basketball player.
I'm going to go on a limb and not look up this TV schedule for tonight because I can tell you with 100% certainty, if there was this NBA slate and they didn't televise nationally the Lakers in Milwaukee and Houston and the Clippers, you may as well just quit your product. I don't exactly know what you're doing.
Right.
This is as good as it gets.
Yeah. So Giannis is a tremendous basketball player. It's a tremendously small slate, tremendous need for points, and he's really not too expensive relative to his projected output, which means he projects well. And I presume he's going to be really popular as a result. But my initial take is if you want to play one of the studs between LeBron, AD, what's his name? Giannis, Harden, Westbrook, Kawhi, whatever. I think Giannis is probably the best play, but my initial build doesn't have him at all. So what the hell do I know? He looks to be the best play, and the next one I would put in is Middleton. And I'd just love to hear your opinion on this game from a DFS standpoint.
So I actually think that there is some viability for this game DFS wise. I really like LeBron again. Okay. And I actually think that the ownership will slant away from him, especially with Davis, assuming Davis plays, which I'm going to assume, even though obviously we've been wrong before. I don't even mind Davis, to be honest with you. These prices are too cheap a little bit for what I see as the upside. Like, well, I pointed out the other day that LeBron has been getting there more often than Trae Young. Of course, they completely switched that night. You have them basically at the same price. If people flock to Trae, I think that you can make a good argument for LeBron. This should be I feel more comfortable this game stays competitive. It's a game that the Lakers – LeBron is a little bit of a man on a mission this year, wanting to win. I do think AD will play, especially because LeBron's coming out with all this anti-resting stuff, which, by the way,
I saw that.
I'm a Laker fan, and I want to say that LeBron is the most hypocritical piece of garbage. Like, this is ridiculous. He's complaining about other guys doing the same thing he's done for the last 10 years. Like, it's absolutely absurd to me. He was load managed every time in Miami, all the time. This whole thing is just completely nonsense. Like, and he just likes to – I don't know. The way he is in his interviews and stuff has really rubbed me the wrong way. I think he's a great person and a great basketball player, but he's just been bugging me with this stuff. But the one thing I will say is that it makes me think guys like AD are more likely to play in these spots where they're questionable than when they're not, if he's going to be taking that stance. I still think it doesn't matter. Like, one of these guys I expect to put up 60, and I wouldn't be surprised if both of them did. I don't think that's optimal for trying to play this slate because Giannis on the other side is just simply a much better play than either of those guys are. And it's really not even close. I think Giannis will be in almost all of my lineups tonight. I haven't built the lineups yet, but when I'm going through scripts and numbers, I'm seeing Giannis just like it's exploding. Like I can't see how he doesn't have a monster game here, especially when you take in the Bledsoe being out. Now, usually that hasn't mattered for them because they've only played that one real close game, which was that game against Dallas that they lost finally. But I think the sneaky play is Lopez and Middleton in this.
Wow.
So you're going to get no ownership on these guys who are too cheap. The minutes projections you can take. So picture this. So their minutes projection for Chris Middleton is 28 minutes. What happens if this game is back and forth, 100 lead changes, nobody leads by more than 5, and it's a fourth quarter, and we're still in that spot? Do you think Middleton's already played 28 minutes by then? Probably. That's my guess. So you might play as many as 38 minutes. So I think there's upside on these minutes, and that's what I'm looking for.
I agree with that for sure.
I think that's where you're looking to make your money on this kind of a game where you can stand out and do something different. It's with Giannis, it's with Middleton, and then Brook Lopez too. First of all, not just because he's coming back, was not coming back, but he's playing against LA or whatever. And everybody likes it. Brook Lopez just fine. The one thing these Lakers bigs don't like to do is get out. We have two good defensive bigs in JaVale and Howard, and we've been defending the position extremely well a year. But these guys don't like to come out on the perimeter, and Brook Lopez can eat him up from out there. So. Also, I want to add that Brook Lopez is 5th in the league in block shots. If you want to play him on a site like FanDuel where he's cheap, he's that sneaky center play that no one ever plays. And on Draftkings at 4.2, I'm definitely going to get me some Brook Lopez. I understand that he could easily put up 15 fantasy points and get me again, or 11. but I also don't think at like 30 is like even. I think 30 is like reasonable. Like I think that he gets there more than he gets 10 or or 15 or whatever it is. So let's play the guy at 4,200 who's going to 7x for us.
Well, let me ask you another question. So, Bledsoe remains out for indefinitely or whatever. Do we try to speculate on these George Hills and Sterling Browns and Dante DiVincenzo's? And
we do, but like that's what's tough is because they all grade out to be so similar. The one you would probably take a chance with would be George Hill in this situation, in my opinion. I mean, Wesley Matthews is crazy cheap. He's 3.3. I'm not going to do it. I'm just throwing it out there. But everybody else, they have too much depth, basically, to be too excited about anybody else. I don't like playing other Milwaukee pieces in general because of that depth, other than Giannis, Lopez, and Middleton. But tonight would be a night where maybe somebody could get a run. It would probably be Hill. But I don't feel great about any of them except for the main guys, and that's sort of the way I'm going to lean.
I would like to say that make a stupid basketball observation that these are two really good defensive teams.
Yeah, they are, but Milwaukee does play fast.
Yeah,
which makes and you just said Rondo before, which I didn't really address. Rondo is completely in play. Okay. I actually think that with Davis back again, no ownership we're talking about. Kind of let people down, even though he wasn't that bad the other night, but wasn't like what we were hoping for with Davis out. The minutes have been there with Davis there. National TV game, up-pace matchup, even though it's a tough defensive one. By the way, it's not a very tough defensive matchup for Rondo. Part of the reason it's tough defensively is because Eric Bledsoe is an all-first-team defensive player. George Hill is used to be a very good defender and now plays like he's 65 years old. So I sort of like that spot. I also you beat Milwaukee from the outside, so it's kind of weird to not mention any 3-point shooters. So if you want to take a shot on Danny Green or KCP, go ahead. But it's just I think that you'll find better spots on this slate, even though it's only 4 games. But I wouldn't be surprised if one of those guys made 4 or 5 threes.
You know, the one thing I noticed, by the way, is Rondo has actually been taking more threes. Just something.
He has been. I mean, unfortunately, the other night was one of the weirdest. You saw that, right? They were trying to tie the game at the end. He had LeBron coming off of a pick wide open, and he chose to shoot it instead from like 28. He almost made it. If he makes it, that night could have gone very well for me because I had that game stacked.
Really?
Yeah, that would have been huge because I remember I had LeBron and it was terrible, but he would have gotten there easy in overtime. And then I had Rondo and I had Sabonis, Brogdon, and Turner like in different lineups, but a combination of those 4 in a bunch. Anyway, I think we covered this game. Very good game. All these games tonight are very good DFS games, and honestly, 2 of them are just terrific basketball games.
Yeah. So the Brooklyn San Antonio game, I don't know why. It just kind of just happened this way. This is a game that I really want to play. Mm-hmm. I think with all the attention basketball wise and otherwise going to some of these other games, I think that Brooklyn and San Antonio, the values created, and I was hoping they reflected their projections a little bit because this is my initial instinct. And they are to some degree. You could get some low-owned guys that could really do some damage in another close spread game, which, you know, on a 4-game slate I think is going to be much lower owned than it could be. On both these sides. So on the Brooklyn side,
point. I mean, I don't want to cut you off, but I sometimes want to have an initial conversation when we talk about a game because I think there's an interesting point. I think people still play the San Antonio opponents as if, I mean, not the sharp people and not centers, but a lot of people play the San Antonio as if they're still this defensive team, and it just simply is not the case anymore. They are completely inept defensively, especially in the middle. So we should be treating them as a team that we want to be targeting, not a team that we want to be avoiding.
Yeah, and I noticed that as well. I mean, they every once in a while they'll put up funny games too. Like they came out and played really well for like 3/4 of the game against Houston the other night on the road, right? And they were just murdering them. And but I agree with you. I still think that both San Antonio and Utah still carry this cachet from years ago as being a really good defensive team. And while, you know, they might be okay, they certainly have just that natural lean that the public has, which at all levels of portfolio management you should be trying to fade. Mm-hmm. So On the Brooklyn side, I'll do this one first, is get nothing too fancy. The same guys I usually play would be Dinwiddie. And then, as you mentioned, they're against centers, they're really not that good. And even though he doesn't project all that great, I mean, Jared Allen just always has that enormous upside. So I would play him. And then I would, again, from a portfolio management and a construction perspective, I would pick one of the other three, between Prince, Temple, and Harris. Hope that one of them goes off, and maybe I wouldn't ever use two of those three in the same lineup. But I could even go three-man stack with the Nets with Dinwiddie, Allen, and one of these three guys, and run it back with some easy options in San Antonio, and and fade all the superstars and see what happens. And I think that it's it's going to project to be probably a little worse than not doing it. But I think from an ownership perspective, I think it's a way to go. Like, for example, on the San Antonio side, and this is like really off brand because these are guys I never play. Like, I think that you could play DeRozan and Aldridge here,
mm-hmm.
and just be in really, really good shape. Now, I don't know what to do with DeJounte Murray, but
I do.
Again, is a guy that, he could frustrate you. But yeah, I got to try it, some of it, and just on sure, aggravation value, I might throw in maybe a Derek White share just in case. But I think it's pretty. I think this is an interesting way to go on this slate. I would never do this on a big 12-game slate with a lot of options. But when I think all the ownership is going to be concentrated elsewhere, maybe I'm wrong about that. I mean, I do see some ownership from DeJounte Murray out there, but he's even like the fifth guy for me in this whole idea. So I'm curious to hear what you think about all this.
I'm back on the Murray. I think that the minutes are going to be coming back to him more and more. He's seen 30 basically the last 3 games. I also he's played with Derek White some, so all of that stuff about you can't play them together. I think that you're right. You don't want to play them together, but like they are playing together at the same time. So let's not forget that that's a possibility. Lonnie Walker playing again. Like, I know it's not a big deal, but like probably takes away a little bit of the love I had for Murray, DeRozan, and Aldridge. But DeRozan and Aldridge seem like very just. Like, I mean, like if you were thinking about cashy plays, like they make sense as cash plays almost, which is weird, but they kind of do. And obviously we know there's upside on that. It's a good matchup. I have some interest in all of them. I'm not wild for it, but I think I'll have a stack with maybe like a Murray Aldridge or a Murray DeRozan Aldridge, or even a Murray DeRozan. Actually, I think this is a kind of game you could get there. And I think on the Brooklyn side, I think that my priority would be Taurean Prince. I feel like the safest with him, and I also think he's got plenty of upside at his price. Really like a middling guy like that. 35 fantasy points feels like a good number for him tonight. I feel like he's going to be in that range. Dinwiddie I like second, but I would put him and Temple on about the same playing field in terms of who I want to play. I think Temple I'll probably end up with more Temple than Dinwiddie because I don't know that I'm going to end up being able to afford Dinwiddie as much. I think he's fine. I just like some of the other spots. And then I really like the Jared Allen call. I think that's just like an extreme tournament play. Like if you see that the ownership doesn't go to him because people are afraid, like then we got to jump on him and take a chance because this guy, I mean, it's weird. Like if you look at it though, I mean, he had the two down games, but in the middle of that, like otherwise he's put up 50, 35, 38, 40, and 43. And to be honest, it's not like he's hitting the ceiling in these games either. Like he can do more. I know that sounds crazy, but he actually can. He's a monster. I love his talent. I wish they just didn't play DeAndre Jordan at all, but he's actually been pretty good too, but I'm not going to play him anyway. Ranking order, Prince, Dinwiddie, Temple, Allen for me, with Joe Harris just behind. And then on the other side, I'm going to play the most of Murray, and then I'm going to play a little bit of DeRozan or some DeRozan and
Okay.
Aldridge.
Moving on, Houston, LAC, just incredible basketball. Just great stuff. Offense versus defense. Defenses don't matter. Defenses do matter. Just all kinds of just awesome stuff in here. So
lots of
Houston,
stuff. Paul George almost was talking about going to Houston. Kawhi was talking about going to Houston. We have the Beverly Westbrook rivalry, which Westbrook literally despises this man as a person. Now, sometimes it hurts him, sometimes it helps him, but there's a lot of stuff going on in this game.
So
team stuff.
Yep. So Houston, Russell Westbrook is a really good play. I'm going to tell you guys some real hot takes here. Russell Westbrook's a really hot take. Clint Capella's a really good play, and James Harden's a pretty good play, and everybody else is worse. On the Clipper side, Kawhi Leonard's a really good play. Paul George is a really good play. Then there's Montrezl Harrell, and then below that is Beverly and Williams. Now, let me give you a couple of ideas. All right. First of all, again, from a construction perspective, you got to do this right, especially on a 4-game slate. You have to answer these types of questions. Like, would you ever play Kawhi and Paul George in the same lineup? Right? Would you play Harden and Westbrook in the same lineup? If you played Westbrook, who would you be more likely to play on the Clipper side if, in fact, you were going to use someone on the Clipper side? These are questions that you kind of have to answer. I don't really have the answers to those. I'm probably going to stay away from this, but I think that you have to kind of figure that out. The two guys that I am really interested in this game, number one, just the guy who always just kind of has that kind of weird upside is Montrezl Harrell. Now, it's not the greatest matchup because Capella is just a freaking beast under there, right? But he's definitely someone. But the guy who's, I don't know, maybe it's recency bias. This Patrick Beverly is my freaking hero. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know if anybody watched the post-game interview after the last game. Some of the clips got put on Twitter. It was just so legendary. All right, they were interviewing him for like 15 minutes. First, he used the F word right on national television, and it didn't get cut off, right? And he said, we ain't effing around. You know, we talking about defense. Then they asked him, you know, hey, you must have been terrible. I felt so bad sitting on the sidelines. Like, man, they're trying to keep me out of the game with a concussion. These people are crazy, you know. So this guy is like the opposite of like Anthony Davis. He's the opposite of so many players that we think are divas out there. Maybe he's a diva in his own way, but
yeah, he is, but it's different. I know what you're saying, though.
He's a different kind of diva. This guy's my freaking hero. And if I'm going to play anybody in a game like this, I'm playing him. Now, I don't know if he projects okay, I suppose, but he's a guy that if I want to, believe me, if there's 4,400 left in a lineup, I'm be playing him. You know what I mean? He can get 12 fantasy points. He can get freaking 40. So I'm kind of interested in him.
Yeah, I think I've sold myself a little bit on this game as being the spot to target. Like,
all right, let's do it.
So I'm with you on Beverly, and the issue is going to be what happens, like the Kawhi, Paul George both being there. It is frustrating because you want to run it back in part of a stack. But I actually think like at these prices and the minutes projections are I'm just looking at this whole game. I'm just going to tell you right now, the minutes projections are completely wrong on the Clippers side of it. Let's put it this way. There's a lot of upside for those minutes. There's upside for Lou Williams at 27. There's upside for Patrick Beverly. Although my bet would be that Patrick Beverly does foul out at some point tonight. He's projected for 28. Montrezl Harrell is projected for 29. Paul George 33. Kawhi 33. Now again, I ask you, this game stays close. It's a back and forth nail. Like we don't think nobody's going to play 36 minutes. You know what I mean?
Kawhi 32 minutes is like a joke if the stays close. I mean, he's gonna.
What about? Like, I mean, even if it's close, like Lou Williams is not going to play 27 minutes. He's going to play 35 if it's 33 if it's close. He'll just miss the very beginning of both quarters of both first and third quarter.
So how do you play this? What do you do?
You play Lou Williams, Patrick Beverly, and Montrezl Harrell on the Clippers side. That's my first take. Not necessarily all together, but I think you even could. But I think that's a really just. You want to talk about being contrary? Nobody's stacking this game and leaving out those guys, I don't think. And I personally Westbrook's been terrible in 2 games so far this year. Historically, he's absolutely massacred Beverly since he tore his MCL. Beverly tore his MCL. Tore Westbrook's. I'm gonna load up on both Harden and Westbrook. I don't understand the respect they're giving to this. I understand how good these Clippers defenders are. Just want to point out that Harden's played this team twice and he scored 71 fantasy points in each game. And he's projected for 56. I don't really know why. So I think just being overweight on the ones who are going to be underweight. My guess is on Draftkings, people don't play Harden tonight. So I think he's a terrific tournament play. And it'll leave you some options to make some swaps late because we'll already have all the information from the early games, basically, with the exception of a tiny bit from the Brooklyn-San Antonio game. So you can actually make some nice little pivots on DK. Maybe you can, if you have 4 guys from this game, you can switch it up and maybe take the Paul George or Kawhi. I like those guys too. They both grade out just fine. But I just think that, you know, if you want to talk about being completely optimal, you know, I would rather bet on Lou Williams to try and win a tournament. Lou Williams getting hot, Montrezl Harrell, who always plays well against Houston, and that's sort of where I would be leaning.
You know, if Trae Young is out, I mean, you even if he is, I mean, can you play like Harden?
Yeah,
Forget
probably.
Harden. Westbrook easier. I mean, and Giannis.
Yeah.
Is there enough of this? Is there enough mid-range value to make all this work?
And then the question becomes: Is it really worth it? Probably
Right.
it would be in that case because you'd have an entire team full of guys who are minimum cost basically, without the the highest usage player on the slate, or second highest usage player on the slate. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I think if I was going to err, by the way, with one side on this one, Paul George would be the preference for me over Kawhi by a little bit. I think it's just pricing related because I can't really make a great argument either way on this one. Yeah, that's basically where I'm at. I don't really know, also with Beverly, with Lou Williams. And again, if this game was in Houston, I'd be more excited. You get Lou Williams and Harrell. Also, they sort of feel spurned by the organization. Harrell's just too cheap though, isn't he? Like he's cheap because they've had some blowout wins. And in the games that are close for the most part, with the exception of the one game against Minnesota, he pretty much puts up 35 to 50. So let's play Montrezl Harrell. I think Montrezl Harrell might be my favorite player in this game now.
Yeah, as I make these builds, as I think about these, I'm sure that I could find. I'm just building some lineup here, right? With Lou Will, Harrell, and Beverly, just because he's 4,400.
Even if there's not, you could always throw in the Royce O'Neal at 4.1 or
right. So what I was going to say, right, is where was like the Royce O'Neal? So if the Royce O'Neal would just, let's say he would go here, and let's say that who's a kind of speculative. What was Rondo?
Rondo's 4.8.
Right.
Oh, and we almost get to Brook Lopez.
So let's just say, right?
Yeah.
You can make it work with Brook Lopez. I'm sure we can make it work. We could trim 100 somewhere. One of these idiots.
Yeah, you don't need to play Rondo necessarily, but I do like the correlation a little bit. But
right. So my point is that
PJ Tucker, by the way, would
get a lineup like this. You get a lineup like this. My question to myself is, how on earth is something like this going to beat it? Like with no Giannis, no Westbrook, no Harden, no anybody. I guess it can, but
you're just playing 50 to 60s. You're hoping for 50 to 60s on the other guys.
On all of them in three overtimes, I guess.
I think it's kind of a sick build. Like, to be honest, I think it is kind of like a really interesting build. I mean, also they could, how they do it? They do it by Aldridge and DeRozan each getting 40, combining for 100, 40 and 60,
right.
45 and 50.
Right.
They do it by Middleton getting 45. They do it by Jared Allen getting 40. They do it by Dinwiddie getting 45 or 50. I think Dinwiddie's the guy I like the least on this lineup, but I get it for the stack.
Right.
But and then Parker, obviously, you need to get the 48-point game, and Rondo, you want the 40-point game. All of a sudden, there you go. You've got over 400. You've got almost 400 points. There you go.
Well, the reason why I put those guys in is like the Parker and the Rondo are just the ultimate. You know what I mean? You say the ultimate tournament plays. Like, these are the guys that
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna need them to 8x, so I may as well put them in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
you could also put instead of Rondo if you wanted to. You could do another mix, and you could play, there's Garrett Temple, or there's a lot of guys in that range that are fine.
So, but I would say that, again, like, we're not, maybe I really don't want to do this, but I don't want to learn how to play cash. I really don't. But if I were to do that on this slate, like, if this is my instinct, is that I would probably try to do something with, I guess, Westbrook and Giannis or something like that. I guess those would be my two safest, you know what I mean? Like, the two guys. I probably wouldn't go up to Harden at 12, whatever. Yeah. And I don't know if I could pick LeBron and AD. You know what I mean? I don't know if I could pick between them, even though, LeBron is maybe a better play. I don't know if I could do it. So I would probably start with something like Giannis and Westbrook, I guess. But I don't know. This could be a fun tournament slate, I think.
I'm actually getting more and more excited about it. I really wasn't even thinking about to start the day. I've got to take my daughter to the airport tonight, but I'm going to be able to make late adjustments, so I think I can still do it. This is going to be a fun one, man. I'm looking forward to it.
I really hope Trae Young plays. I really don't need the aggravation.
Yeah, I don't think I really don't think they're not going to play him. I just don't see it happening. I mean, he must be really hurt if they're just idiots for making it even a question. But anyway, man, final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I'm telling you, this is this is perfect. It's like a perfect NBA basketball slate with the two great NBA games sandwiching the one that's going to win me the tournament, which I like.
Yeah.
But it's a great day for it's a great day for basketball, and as usual, it's every day for DFS. It's a good day for DFS because every slate provides different challenges, and today it's going to be, how many of those studs, how many of those awesome basketball players do you want in your lineup? How to correlate them, and what you're giving up by doing so, and again, like everything else, just don't forget that ownership review. I mean, make sure that, if you get too cutesy and take Trae Young, make sure he's not 30% owned when you do it. You know what I mean? So it's gonna be interesting to see how this plays out. I want to look at lineup review tomorrow, like some of the best players, and see actually where they went, because I'd be very interested to know what.
So you're asking me for my lineup review then, huh?
Exactly.
All right. Well, I wanted to real quick before we get out of here. I'm just going to introduce my daughter. I don't bring her on here very often. I don't think Sheets has met her yet. Eric, this is my daughter, Karina. And I'm just going to say hi to the people real quick because she's down here visiting. Karina, can you lead down a little bit?
Yeah. Hi.
Anyway, so yeah, we're about to go on a trip to Costa Rica, so we just wanted to introduce her. Anyway, thanks, sweetie. Anyway, with that, I would just recommend to you guys that it's going to be a 7:30 Eastern starting time tonight. So you want to make sure to note that in your calendar, not 7 o'clock. And Sheets has the LFG hat on. We will be talking to you tomorrow with a lot more money than we have today. We're out of here, guys. Thanks.
Okay.